ExamPrep.School. WA Property and Casualty Insurance Producer Combo Exam. There are 4 practice exams in this series. This video covers Practice Exam 1. The first 20 questions are free. In this video, we will be covering the following major categories for Practice Exam 1. Commercial lines policies, commercial auto, property, CGL, BOP, federal laws and regulations, general insurance concepts, other coverages, umbrella specialty, workers' compensation, personal lines policies, dwelling, homeowners, personal auto, property and casualty insurance basics, WA laws, rules, and regulations, casualty and auto insurance only, WA laws, rules, and regulations, common to property and casualty, WA laws, rules, and regulations, property insurance only. Let's walk through the format. I'll read each question and its choices. Let's get started. Question 1. Which of the following best describes the primary purpose of the Fair Credit Reporting Act, FCRA, as it pertains to insurance underwriting? A. To establish minimum coverage requirements for property and casualty policies. B. To regulate the rates and premiums charged by insurers. C. To ensure accuracy, fairness, and privacy of consumer credit information used by insurers. D. To mandate reinsurance and surplus line standards. A countdown circle appears in the top right. Once it completes, the answer is revealed. You can pause at any time if you'd like longer to think. If you'd like additional practice covering more topics, see the description for our book. The correct answer is C. The FCRA was enacted to promote the accuracy, fairness, and privacy of consumer information, including credit data used by insurers in underwriting decisions. Reason A is not correct. Establishing minimum coverage requirements is governed by state insurance statutes, not the FCRA. Reason B is not correct. Rate and premium regulation falls under state insurance departments rather than the FCRA. Reason D is not correct. Reinsurance and surplus lines are addressed by other federal and state insurance laws, not the FCRA. Question 2. Which of the following most accurately defines a consumer report under the Fair Credit Reporting Act? A. An insurer's internal claims analysis and reserving estimate. B. A self-prepared financial disclosure statement provided by a consumer to an insurer. C. Any communication by a consumer reporting agency regarding an individual's creditworthiness, character, reputation, or behavior. D. A periodic performance report issued by an employer about an employee. The correct answer is C. Under the FCRA, a consumer report is any information communicated by a consumer reporting agency about a consumer's creditworthiness, character, reputation, or lifestyle. Reason A is not correct. Internal insurer analyses are proprietary and not issued by consumer reporting agencies. Reason B is not correct. Voluntary financial statements are not furnished by consumer reporting agencies and thus do not meet the FCRA definition. Reason D is not correct. Employer performance evaluations are not covered because they are not issued by consumer reporting agencies. Question 3. An insurance company plans to order an investigative consumer report on an applicant to verify eligibility for a specialty homeowners policy. Under the Fair Credit Reporting Act, which action must the insurer take before obtaining this report? A. Provide a written disclosure and obtain the applicant's written authorization before ordering the investigative consumer report. B. Deliver a summary of consumer rights within 5 days after ordering the investigative report, regardless of decision. C. Allow the applicant 90 days to dispute any findings before underwriting the policy. D. Notify the applicant only if adverse underwriting action will be based on the report's contents. The correct answer is A. Before obtaining any investigative consumer report under FCRA, a clear and conspicuous written disclosure and the applicant's written authorization are required. Other post-order notices apply only upon adverse action. Reason B is not correct. Providing a summary of rights after ordering pertains to adverse action notices, not initial report procurement. Reason C is not correct. There is no 90-day dispute period requirement before underwriting. Dispute rights follow an adverse action. Reason D is not correct. Notice is required before any report retrieval, not only when adverse action is contemplated. Question 4. Under 18 U.S.C. sections 1033 and 1034, which of the following best defines dishonesty or a breach of trust for purposes of federal insurance fraud provisions? A. Any intentional misstatement or concealment of a material fact in an insurance application. B. The embezzlement, misappropriation, or fraudulent conversion of funds or property entrusted to an insurer or agent. C. An unauthorized delay in claims payment resulting in financial harm. D. Willful refusal to comply with state insurance regulations governing premium collection. The correct answer is B. The correct answer is defined in the statutes as embezzlement, or fraudulent misappropriation of entrusted funds or property. Reason A is not correct. Material misstatements relate to application fraud but do not encompass fiduciary misappropriation. Reason C is not correct. Delayed claims payment is improper but not defined as dishonesty or breach of trust under these statutes. Reason D is not correct. Regulatory noncompliance does not meet the statute's definition of dishonesty involving fiduciary funds. Question 5. According to 18 U.S.C. Section 1033, which individual is automatically barred from engaging in the business of insurance in the United States without obtaining a waiver? A. A person convicted of a felony assault offense 5 years ago. B. A person convicted of a misdemeanor involving breach of trust 2 years ago. C. A person convicted of nonviolent drug possession offense 3 years ago. D. A person convicted of a reckless driving infraction 3 years ago. The correct answer is B. Under Section 1033, individuals convicted of misdemeanors involving dishonesty or breach of trust are prohibited from insurance business without waiver. Reason A is not correct. Felony assault is not categorized as dishonesty or breach of trust under the statute. Reason C is not correct. Drug possession is not an offense involving dishonesty or breach of trust. Reason D is not correct. Reckless driving is a motor offense and not related to fiduciary misconduct. Question 6. Under federal insurance fraud law, to secure a waiver allowing a prohibited individual to engage in insurance business, written consent must be obtained from which authorities? A. The State Insurance Commissioner and the U.S. Department of Treasury. B. The State Insurance Commissioner and the U.S. Attorney General. C. The National Association of Insurance Commissioners and the State Attorney General. D. The U.S. Attorney General and the Federal Insurance Office Director. The correct answer is B. Section 1033 requires written consent from both the State Insurance Commissioner and the U.S. Attorney General before a prohibited person may engage in insurance activities. Reason A is not correct. The Department of Treasury is not involved in issuing these waivers. Reason C is not correct. The NAIC and State Attorney General do not have statutory authority for these written consents. Reason D is not correct. The Federal Insurance Office Director does not participate in the waiver process. Question 7. Which of the following best describes the primary objective of the National Flood Insurance Program in protecting property? A. To develop and maintain floodplain mapping and risk assessment for nationwide planning. B. To offer flood insurance backed by the federal government to reduce reliance on federal disaster assistance. C. To require private insurers to offer flood coverage at market-based rates. D. To finance large-scale structural flood control projects in coordination with local authorities. The correct answer is B. The National Flood Insurance Program was created primarily to provide federally backed flood insurance that encourages property owners to obtain coverage, thereby reducing the need for costly federal disaster relief after flood events. Reason A is not correct. Mapping and risk assessment are roles of the program but not its chief aim, which focuses on insurance availability and disaster cost reduction. Reason C is not correct. The program provides insurance through a federal framework rather than mandating private insurers to offer coverage at market rates. Reason D is not correct. Financing structural flood control is outside the NFIP's core function, which centers on insurance rather than project funding. Question 8. The city of Riverton, which includes several parcels within a designated floodplain, seeks to join the National Flood Insurance Program so its residents can purchase federally backed flood insurance. Which of the following actions must the city take to satisfy NFIP eligibility requirements? A. Enact floodplain management ordinances that meet or exceed FEMA's minimum elevation and construction requirements. B. Perform a flood risk assessment every 5 years following FEMA technical guidelines. C. Purchase flood insurance policies for at least half of properties in designated flood zones. D. Encourage property owners to elevate structures in floodplain areas without formal community regulations. The correct answer is A. The correct answer is that the city must enact and enforce floodplain management ordinances consistent with FEMA's minimum elevation and construction requirements. Compliance with these regulatory standards is the core eligibility criterion for NFIP participation. Reason B is not correct. This option is incorrect because conducting assessments does not fulfill the NFIP's requirement to adopt and enforce specific floodplain management regulations. Reason C is not correct. This option is incorrect because the NFIP eligibility is based on a community's regulatory measures, not on purchasing insurance for properties. Reason D is not correct. This option is incorrect because informal encouragement without formal ordinances does not satisfy the NFIP's mandated regulatory standards. Question 9. Under Washington law, which of the following statutory authorities is granted to the insurance commissioner over insurance producers? A. Determining the commission rates paid by insurers to producers. B. Revoking or suspending a producer's license for statutory violations. C. Negotiating contract terms between producers and insurers. D. Setting premium rates for producers' client policies. The correct answer is B. The commissioner has the power to suspend or revoke a producer's license for violations of insurance statutes. Rate setting and contract negotiations are outside that authority. Reason A is not correct. Commission rates are negotiated between insurers and producers and not set by the commissioner. Reason C is not correct. Contract negotiations occur privately between producers and insurers, not by commissioner mandate. Reason D is not correct. Premium rates for policies are regulated through insurer rate filings, not by controlling producers' client policies. Question 10. Under Washington law, the insurance commissioner's power to adopt binding insurance rules and regulations is governed primarily by which process? A. Adopting rules under the Administrative Procedure Act with notice and hearing. B. Issuing informal bulletins without public comment. C. Submitting each rule for legislative approval by the state legislature. D. Issuing executive orders under the governor's emergency powers. The correct answer is A. The commissioner must follow the Administrative Procedure Act, providing public notice and opportunity for hearing, to promulgate binding insurance rules. Reason B is not correct. Bulletins are guidance documents and not binding regulations under APA rulemaking. Reason C is not correct. Legislative approval is not required for rules adopted by the commissioner under the APA. Reason D is not correct. Executive orders under emergency powers do not govern the standard rulemaking authority. Question 11. Prior to initiating a market conduct examination in Washington, the insurance commissioner must provide written notice to the examination subject at least how many days in advance? A. 10 days. B. 5 days. C. 30 days. D. 60 days. The correct answer is A. Washington law requires the commissioner to give at least 10 days written notice before beginning any market conduct examination. Reason B is not correct. 5 days is shorter than the statutorily required notice period. Reason C is not correct. 30 days exceeds the minimum. The statute specifies 10 days. Reason D is not correct. 60 days is not required. The law sets a 10-day minimum notice period. Question 12. Which of the following is a statutory ground for the Washington Insurance Commissioner to commence an administrative action against an insurance producer? A. Charging only the fees disclosed in the producer's written fee schedule. B. Maintaining a business office outside the state without appointment. C. Failing to file proof of financial responsibility for a client. D. Misrepresenting policy terms or benefits in sales materials. The correct answer is D. Misrepresentation of policy terms is explicitly listed as a ground for administrative action, whereas the other options are not statutory grounds under the insurance code. Reason A is not correct. Charging disclosed fees is permissible and not a basis for administrative action. Reason B is not correct. Maintaining an out-of-state office without appointment may violate licensing, but is not a specific statutory ground listed for administrative action. Reason C is not correct. Proof of financial responsibility relates to client coverage, not a direct administrative ground against a producer. Question 13. ACME Insurers Association recently submitted a petition to amend the rules governing policy form approvals under WAC Chapter 284. The insurance commissioner has scheduled a public hearing to consider the proposed amendments. According to Washington's rulemaking process, what must the commissioner do next to comply with the public hearing requirements? A. Appoint a hearing examiner no later than 10 days before the scheduled hearing. B. Open a 30-day written comment period after the hearing before adopting the rule. C. Publish a CR 102 notice in the Washington State Register at least 21 days before the hearing date. D. Issue an interim final rule to take effect immediately pending the hearing outcome. The correct answer is C. The correct answer is to publish a CR 102 notice at least 21 days before the hearing, because under the Washington Administrative Procedure Act, agencies must provide adequate advance notice in the state register to allow for meaningful public participation. Reason A is not correct. There is no statutorily mandated deadline for appointing a hearing examiner. The critical requirement is the advance publication of the CR 102 notice. Reason B is not correct. The written comment period continues through the hearing date, but the rulemaking notice, CR 102, must be published in advance, not deferred until after the hearing. Reason D is not correct. Interim final rules cannot be issued prior to the public hearing. The hearing must occur, and all comments considered before adoption. Question 14. Which of the following is not a requirement to obtain a resident insurance producer license in Washington? A. Be at least 18 years of age. B. Pass the state licensing examination. C. Be a United States citizen. D. Pay the prescribed application fees. The correct answer is C. The correct answer is not being a United States citizen because Washington law requires proof of lawful presence rather than U.S. citizenship, whereas all other options are statutory prerequisites for licensure. Reason A is not correct. Applicants must be at least 18 years old under state law, so this is indeed a requirement. Reason B is not correct. Passing the licensing examination is a mandatory step before issuance of a producer license in Washington. Reason D is not correct. Payment of the prescribed application fees is required for processing any license application. Question 15. Under Washington law, when may the state waive the examination requirement for a non-resident insurance producer applicant? A. If the producer has never been disciplined in any jurisdiction. B. If the applicant has at least 3 years of experience in insurance underwriting. C. If the producer holds a current license in a home state that grants Washington producers the same exam waiver. D. If the applicant completes a Washington-approved pre-licensing course. The correct answer is C. The correct answer is that Washington will waive its exam requirement only when the applicant's home state reciprocally waives the exam for Washington producers. The other options are not conditions for reciprocity. Reason A is not correct. A clean disciplinary record alone does not trigger an exam waiver without reciprocal treatment from the home state. Reason B is not correct. Length of experience does not substitute for the exam requirement under Washington's reciprocity rules. Reason D is not correct. Completion of a pre-licensing course is unrelated to the waiver of the examination under reciprocity provisions. Question 16. Which statement accurately describes the fingerprint-based background check requirement for producer license applicants in Washington? A. Only a Washington State Patrol background check is required. B. Fingerprints are required only for resident applicants, not non-resident. C. Both a Washington State Patrol and an FBI background check must be conducted. D. Local law enforcement clearances may be submitted instead of fingerprints. The correct answer is C. The correct answer is that Washington requires both state-level, state patrol, and federal FBI fingerprint-based checks for all producer applicants. The other options do not comply with statutory requirements. Reason A is not correct. Washington law requires more than just the state patrol check. It also mandates an FBI background check. Reason B is not correct. Fingerprint requirements apply to all applicants regardless of residency status. Reason D is not correct. Local clearances cannot substitute for the mandated electronic fingerprint submissions. Question 17. How many total continuing education credit hours must Washington property and casualty producers complete during each 2-year renewal period? A. 20 hours. B. 36 hours. C. 30 hours. D. 24 hours. The correct answer is D. The correct answer is 24 hours, because Washington requires property and casualty producers to complete 24 continuing education credits biennially. The other hour totals do not match the statutory requirement. Reason A is not correct. 20 hours is below the required 24-hour minimum. Reason B is not correct. 36 hours are more than what Washington law requires for P&C renewal. Reason C is not correct. 30 hours exceed the biennial requirement and are not mandated. Question 18. How many days after a Washington producer license expires does state law allow for late renewal with payment of the late fee? A. 15 days. B. 90 days. C. 60 days. D. 30 days. The correct answer is D. The correct answer is 30 days because Washington permits a 30-day grace period for late renewal upon payment of the late fee. Other timeframes are not permitted by statute. Reason A is not correct. A 15-day period is too short and not recognized by Washington regulations. Reason B is not correct. 90 days is beyond the allowable late renewal period in Washington. Reason C is not correct. 60 days exceeds the statutory late renewal window. Question 19. A Washington property and casualty producer Did not complete the required continuing education before the license renewal deadline. The Office of the Insurance Commissioner has issued a notice, but the producer still has not met the CE requirement. What is the immediate regulatory consequence for the producer's license? A. The license remains active, but the producer must pay a penalty and complete CE within 30 days. B. The license is placed on inactive status until the CE requirements are fulfilled. C. The license renewal is denied, and the producer must reapply for licensure as a new applicant. D. The license is suspended until the CE requirements are met and any administrative fees are paid. The correct answer is D. The license will be suspended until the producer completes the required continuing education and pays any applicable administrative fees. Suspension, rather than mere inactivity or denial requiring new application, is the immediate consequence under Washington law for failure to complete CE by renewal. Reason A is not correct. Continued license activity is not permitted. Suspension, not mere penalty with active status, applies. Reason B is not correct. Inactive status differs from suspension. Law specifies suspension until CE completion. Reason C is not correct. Denial requiring new application occurs only after prolonged noncompliance, not immediately upon missing CE. Question 20. A Washington insurance producer knowingly misrepresented key policy benefits to secure a client's business. Under state regulations, which outcome is most likely for the producer's license? A. License revocation for misrepresentation of material facts. B. License suspension for failure to notify the commissioner of an address change. C. License probation with requirement to maintain errors and omissions insurance. D. Refusal to renew the license solely due to late payment of renewal fees. The correct answer is A. Misrepresentation of material facts in the sale of insurance is a statutory ground for license revocation in Washington. Other violations such as address change notification or fee payment issues lead to suspension or renewal refusal, not outright revocation. Reason B is not correct. Address change notification failures result in administrative suspension, not revocation. Reason C is not correct. Probation with E and O insurance is a corrective measure, not the statutory penalty for misrepresentation. Reason D is not correct. Late fee payments may delay renewal but do not trigger license revocation. Enjoyed this practice test? Tap like, hit subscribe, and share it with a classmate. Got a question we should tweak? Comment below. We read them all. Find full practice exam books in the description or at ExamPrep.School.